Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are watching Season 1, Episode 16, The Forsaken. This episode first aired May 23rd, 1993. Before we start on this episode, is there anything from the previous podcast you'd like to talk about?
Just that it was the worst episode I think we've seen so far in the season.
It was awful.
Bad.
I mean, it's funny that both of us were like, this show sucked. It was really terrible. And I keep thinking that I like the goofball things that happen on Star Trek, but I did not enjoy that episode. It was bad. And it was just made so much worse by all the Bashir creeping.
It wasn't a terrible concept. I just think it was very poorly executed. And it really sort of didn't work. It felt like filler.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about this episode. Maybe it will be better.
Yes, we always live in hope.
We start with Sisko giving a station log. Stardate 46925.1. He sounds like he has a cold in this log. He was a little sinusy. Hopefully he doesn't have a virus. He says there is a delegation of Federation ambassadors on the station on a fact-finding mission to the wormhole. He says he has just the officer to take them off his hands. And then we drop into Quark's, and Julian is talking to one of the ambassadors. She's requesting improved quarters, of course, but Julian is saying the guest quarters are all the same size, so it wouldn't matter if we changed quarters for her. She said, but the crew quarters are bigger. And he's like, well, those are all occupied. And she says, well, then someone can move. You, for example.
Maybe Quark could give his own brother's quarters up to her.
Oh, yes. Like in the Negus.
I do like how Sisko has dumped all these awful ambassadors who are out on a Beano onto Bashir. Well deserved, I thought.
What's a Beano?
Oh, it's an English phrase for like going on a jolly, getting a free trip.
I see. Like a field trip.
Yes, paid for by somebody else.
I see. Okay. So in addition to the female ambassador that she's talking to, there are two other ambassadors at the table. There's a blue guy and a Vulcan. The blue guy is saying, this is exactly how she behaved on the journey here. And the woman is saying, well, you are constantly telling the captain how to run his ship. These guys are fun.
Oh, yeah.
The blue guy then complains that they haven't spent any time with Sisko. He says he's got some suggestions for him, too. I'm sure he does.
He seems like the type, doesn't he?
Bashir says Sisko is extremely busy with, and he seems to just make something up. And he says, with the recalibration sweep. And Bashir is just sort of bumbling his way through here, obviously just trying to placate them. This is a good job for him. Keeps him busy.
Important word of advice there. Do not talk science in front of a Vulcan if you're making it up.
Right, because then the Vulcan immediately wants to observe the sweep. But Bashir suggests maybe we should just visit a holosuite. And the woman asks if he's suggesting they indulge in one of the disgusting Ferengi sex programs. Yes, thank you very much. That's exactly what he's suggesting.
He might be the baseball program, you never know.
Bashir tries to save himself, but the blue guy says, of course that's what he's suggesting. The Arabizans, which apparently is what she is, are so sexually repressed. And now, of course, she is outraged, and she's going to report him to Starfleet Command. She can't believe a first-year officer is their liaison.
I think that's also Sisko sending a bit of a message to the ambassadors.
Yes, like he doesn't care.
This is how important I rate you.
Yes. But they got to be used to that.
Yeah.
And then there's a commotion behind them at the bar, and someone is shouting, it's gone, it's gone. Julian jumps up and runs over, and we see an old favorite character from Next Gen, Lwaxana Troi.
Yay.
And she's in a pink wig and an extremely bright pink and slightly purple gown. It's kind of like she's wearing shoulder pads made out of feathers. It is quite an outfit.
I would expect nothing less with Lwaxana.
Totally. She needs to be seen. She says her latinum hair brooch is gone, and Julian immediately yells, Quark, which seems right. And she says she was reaching across the table to roll the dice, and someone brushed against her, and my God, I've been wigged. Wigged? What is that?
I have no idea.
I actually Googled it because I'm like, is that just some kind of a phrase? I don't know. And no, she made it up. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I just took it as a localized slang for being robbed.
I guess so. Quark appears, and he refers to the sign that says his establishment is not responsible for the loss of any personal items. And it turns out it's a very tiny sign above the door, the inside of the door, so you would only see it when you were leaving.
Nice.
And he says he's very sorry, and then he turns to leave, but she's no dummy. She grabs his ear and says, you are dealing with the daughter of the fifth house, holder of the sacred chalice of Reeks, and the heir to the holy rings of Beta Z, which is something we used to hear her say on Next Gen all the time. Quark complains, but Lwaxana calls him a troll and says she knows where it hurts the most, which is why she's squeezing his ear.
She is priceless.
She says she wants the room sealed and everyone strip searched. Now that would be an episode I would enjoy. But we didn't do that, because Odo arrives, asking what the trouble is, and she says her brooch was stolen, and it's been in her family for 36 generations, and it's priceless. So why are you wandering around this ridiculous gas station wearing a priceless brooch?
Yeah, it's like going into a really bad neighborhood with a Rolex.
Right. Odo asks if she's certain she was wearing the brooch today, and she says, of course I'm certain. I never used this hair without it. She is something.
Oh, yeah.
He says, you're Betazoid, right? And telepathic. Do you sense any guilt in the room? And she says she doesn't sense any guilt, but Betazoid can't read Ferengi, which is very convenient. I'm wondering if that's because their heads are so big or because they have no feelings, especially of guilt. It could be either one.
Now, there's something I'll point out here based on what you just said. What if your species or race does not have a concept of theft? Like stealing was either a sport or maybe it was morally justified. If your needs were more than somebody of wealth, culturally, didn't look at it as theft. It was like, well, I need it more, I'm going to take it.
Right.
You wouldn't feel any sense of guilt.
Yeah.
That's a little loose in that situation.
Well, that's what I wrote down, was that you can't read guilt if somebody doesn't feel guilt. But if she's also telepathic, then you could maybe see that she would
be able to pick up on.
Right. Read somebody's mind that, oh, I have to get away, or I have to hide this, or who else can I rob? Something like that.
Right. That's a good point.
She looks suspiciously at Quark because she's just assuming it's him or another Ferengi since she can't read him. And Odo says Quark has a lot of reason to feel guilty, but he doesn't usually resort to petty theft. Quark thanks him, and then Odo starts surveying the room carefully, and the music is kind of dramatic at this point. He notices a suspicious conversation going on, and he grabs an alien, and this very sinister music is playing, and he tells the dude to empty his pockets. And the little alien dude, who has no lines, maybe because his rubber mask doesn't move and he can't speak, but he's wearing a very flimsy purple costume. And I say flimsy because it appears like it's quite thin, as if it's that sort of sweat-wicking workout gear. Anyway, he empties his pockets onto the table, and guess what? He has the brooch. He's also got his Starfleet communicator, which was pretty funny.
Maybe he has Julian's missing uniform as well.
Oh my God, that's right. His dress uniform from Move Along Home.
Exactly.
Lwaxana is thrilled and asks how he could possibly have known this guy had it. And Odo says Dopterians are distant relatives of the Ferengi, so it makes sense that if you couldn't read Quark, you might not be able to read him either. Good detective work here, Odo.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he knows his lowlifes.
It also shows Odo has an understanding of other races and seems to have knowledge of the people who are visiting the station.
Yeah.
That points to his level of professionalism.
Yeah, he knows his lowlifes.
Yeah. One final thing in this scene. It's kind of funny how Bashir, who's supposed to be such a charming salutatorian, doesn't seem to do very well with the ambassadors.
Yeah, you would think he would be good at sucking up, but apparently he sucks at sucking up.
That seemed kind of odd. I can only assume maybe he was intimidated by them.
I don't know, that wasn't really the implication.
Yeah.
He was definitely uncomfortable. You're right, it doesn't really fit because he is supposed to be so smooth and how he's always picking up the ladies.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make any sense that all of a sudden he's not smooth when he's just put into a very similar situation, especially with a woman where you'd think he would at least try to charm her.
Right.
But instead he sort of stumbles over himself. He doesn't really know what to do. He ends up just annoying them.
Yeah.
But they only do that for the story because they want him to redeem himself later. So after Odo finds the brooch, Lwaxana says, how perfectly brilliant of you. She's very impressed. And then Odo takes the dude away, leaving all of the contents of his pockets just sitting on the table. So hopefully somebody picked those up before Quark grabbed them.
Well, I'm sure Quark would actually just look after them, make sure nobody stole them.
Maybe he'll just, put them in the lost and found.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's very much the thing Quark would do.
I'm sure. Lwaxana tells Julian she wants to know everything there is to know about the security chief. Uh-oh. She's got someone new to latch onto.
That's what my notes say too. Uh-oh, Lwaxana is interested.
And then we cue the theme song. After the theme, we are in ops. Miles, sleeves rolled up,
he's working,
is asking if the diagnostic on the fusion power plant is finished yet. The computer says the fusion power plant is operating within normal parameters. You can just hear the computer saying that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Miles is immediately annoyed, saying it's 13% below normal, and the computer says Cardassian specifications accept operating efficiency within 20%, which is a very high margin for error.
80% efficiency. This is why the Cardassians were forced to leave Bajor. They accept substandard levels of efficiency.
So These are Cardassian computers, correct?
Yes.
Why would the Cardassian computer say Cardassian specifications? Wouldn't it just be specifications? Do they just add Cardassian so we know it's Cardassian?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's just why they add it.
Yeah.
And plus, why haven't they looked at replacing the computer system?
We talk about it in this episode, right? Miles wants to gut the whole thing. We do get that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Did you notice Miles needs a haircut? He's got some fuzz going on that it needs to be controlled.
I did not notice that, but you are the fashion expert of the show.
Do they have a barber on Deep Space Nine?
I do not believe we are ever introduced to a barber.
That would have actually been more interesting for Garrick to be the barber rather than a clothier.
I think it would be interesting if they introduced a barber to the show.
Yeah, maybe we can.
That would actually make another good character they could have there. They could do a whole barbershop sort of vibe.
Yeah, that would be kind of funny in space. So Miles calls for who I thought was an NPC, but turns out she has a name, Anara.
Yes.
And also she has lines, which shocked me. She's Bajoran, and she's wearing a purple uniform. It's very light colored, but still, it's purple. It's like Kira's uniform, but in a different color. Miles asks her how much she knows about carbon reaction chambers, and she says not much more than the basics. And O'Brien says it's a bloody inefficient system, and can she keep an eye on the exhaust plasma temperature? She nods. So she's had only one line so far, but I think that takes her out of NPC.
Yeah, I think that takes her out of NPC. That's a great uniform. I look at that and think, that's a good cosplay right there. It's got a great look to it.
Yep.
Although, I will admit, I am worried. They're giving her a name, and she's got a line. At this point, I was like, oh no, is she going to be a red shirt?
Oh, but a purple one? No. Well, then we get a Miles on-brand argument with the computer where he tells the computer to do something and it says it's not recommended. So he yells angrily at it, but it won't listen. It says he needs to consult Cardassian operational guidelines. No one else seems to have an emotional relationship with the voice coming from the computer. It's really sort of funny. I guess that's just Miles' thing. So he decides that he'll just have to do whatever it is that he wants manually without the computer, which honestly, it probably shouldn't work. You probably shouldn't be able to just do things manually on a space station without the computer approving of it. But he says a bunch of sciencey things about redirecting plasma flow.
So he's going to manually override the reactor?
Yeah.
Was it just me, or were you getting a distinctly Chernobyl feel to this?
No, I didn't get that. I didn't get that feeling, but yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, I know better than the reactor. That doesn't usually end well.
So then Anara gets another line, and she says the power flow from reactor 2 has shut down, and Miles is really annoyed because the computer is stopping his manual changes. Which I have to say, that seems like a good thing.
I was very worried about Anara at this point.
Cisco walks in as Miles is yelling at the computer again. Cisco says, relax, it's just a computer. He's clearly never had an argument with a computer before. And Miles is like, this is no computer. It's my arch enemy. Which is very funny.
I like that.
He says it needs a root canal, meaning getting into its guts and rebuilding it from the ground up. And Cisco asks how long that will take. And Miles says, 2 or 3 years, which is quite an estimate. And Cisco thinks that's an awful lot of time and manpower.
I like how Miles is being a little petulant here.
Yeah.
And Cisco is doing that leadership thing. He's reassuring him. And it's almost like I'm on your side, Miles. I just want you to do the job.
Yeah, Miles got annoyed and he started to storm off. And Cisco is like, well, wait, just, what is it that you'd have to do? Just like any software project, the product manager doesn't want to spend time rebuilding a thing that already works from their perspective, but the engineer hates it and wants to recreate it. Been there.
Yeah, that was how the vibe of it very much came off on me.
Right. Then Bashir comes into ops with the ambassadors, and Cisco looks quite annoyed, but he puts on a fake smile. And it's a very specific fake smile because he's looking at the camera and then he puts the fake smile on and then he turns to look at them.
This is what I mean about the political aspect to the character of Cisco. It's the way he turns on his game face. He realizes this is now something that's unavoidable. He has to do the schmooze with the ambassadors.
Right.
I did very much like the way they showed that, of him taking that pause and then going into, I'm a charming host.
Yeah.
I really like Avery Brooks.
Obviously. He says he trusts that Dr. Bashir is taking care of their needs, and the female ambassador, again, complains about her accommodations. It's like, this is a gas station, lady. It's not a hotel. You're just complaining for no good reason. There's no luxury penthouse suite. This is just all little hovels.
I'm imagining back at Federation headquarters, they actually were drawing short straws to figure out who would go on this trip. They assigned people they wanted to suffer.
So they got all the low rent ambassadors.
Yeah, all the ambassadors who weren't very popular.
Right. Oh my God. They wanted to get rid of them for a couple of weeks or months.
Didn't Frowny Face Primman say it was 3 weeks to get there?
Yes.
Exactly.
So now she's complaining about sleeping in a Cardassian bed with gargoyles staring at her from wooden poles. We have wooden beds? We have not seen that, so I don't know what she's talking about. I wish we'd seen that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, they might be very impressive beds. Obviously the Cardassian officer class.
Right. Because my vision of the Cardassian bed was just that there was a cutout in the cot that was the shape of the Cardassian uniform.
Yes.
That's how I thought the bed would look. So I really want to see this wooden bed with gargoyles on it. I feel like we missed out.
Yeah, and very uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, it would be hard as rock. Just then, Kira interrupts saying an unidentified vessel is coming through the wormhole. They put it on screen. Bashir says, quite a sight, isn't it? And the blue dude, the blue ambassador, is like, meh, seen better. These guys are such duds. They're just terrible. Yeah. Dax says scanners aren't picking up any life forms on board this ship, and Sisko wonders if it's a probe, not a ship. It kind of looks like a probe. Dax says there is an extensive computer array on board, but nothing to suggest that it's trying to maintain contact with another ship. The Vulcan ambassador says the young woman obviously doesn't have the necessary experience, and he steps forward like he's going to replace Dax. And Bashir grabs his shoulder and says, that young woman has over 300 years of experience. And then the Vulcan's like, okay, so he doesn't do anything.
I found that surprising. I would still expect the Vulcan to want to get involved, even just for the science aspect of it.
Yeah.
Maybe he's more of a political Vulcan than a true science Vulcan.
Well, they implied earlier that all of these three like to interfere.
Ah, that's true.
And so it was surprising that he stopped at that point. Maybe he was just surprised to learn that Dax was not a young woman.
One other slight diversion here. Sisko's reaction to these ambassadors. Perhaps it's me being cynical, but maybe as a career man, Sisko knows these aren't the top flight of people. So he doesn't really have to put himself out for them.
Right. He doesn't want the trouble of causing a problem with them.
Yeah.
But he doesn't feel like he needs to go out of his way for them.
Exactly. Because these ambassadors, the worst they could do would be ensure you get bad food rations.
Yeah, they're the B team.
The vending machines would have substandard programs.
Yeah, surely if this was the A team, we'd have Spock and not just some random Vulcan. Then Dax says she might have better luck if they towed it into the docking ring. They're always so willing to just bring things on board. They just seem like they're not careful enough. But of course, I worry endlessly about alien viruses, but, you know, welcome to 2020. Sisko says to tow it to 500 meters off the docking ring. Don't bring it in. And then he says, we'll see if we can learn anything about it there. Bashir tries to remove the ambassadors, but the blue guy's like, this might be first contact with a new species. And I have a particular interest in first contact and stuffy, blah, 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 important ambassador stuff.
They're very full of themselves, aren't they?
Sisko says he appreciates his interest and will schedule a briefing later, but for now they can all go to the docking ring near Port 7 to view the probe more closely. He also says the briefing is at 0400, which is a very strange time for a briefing. I don't know how they do their days there, but I'm not going to a briefing at 0400. I'm sleeping.
Excellent job, Sisko. Schedule a briefing. Yeah. Just get them out of here.
And then Bashir ushers them all out. Kira smirks at Sisko, and he kind of sighs like, oh my God, get these people away from me.
I like how she seems to be taking some pleasure from his discomfort.
Yeah, she was amused by this. And she was glad it wasn't her.
Yeah, seeing as how she has struggled with this role of moving into a more political field and having to sort of deal with those types of people. I imagine it's quite funny for her seeing Sisko having to deal with the same thing.
Right. Now we go to Odo's office, and Lwaxana is standing in his doorway watching Odo punch away at his datapad. She says something about his intensity and passion. And she's changed clothes, by the way. Now she's in this sheer blue outfit with a red wig. She comes in flirting with him, which is the thing she does. She calls him the thin beige line between order and chaos.
Aww.
Easily the best line of the episode. And as usual, he takes to a little buttering up, saying, well, that's my job. And he asks if she's lost anything else, and she says, only my heart. Oh dear.
She is incorrigible, isn't she?
She is. She asks if Odo is his first or last name, and he says yes. And she smiles as she gets closer to him, saying his name has a certain lyrical quality. And then she says, Odo. It rolls off the tongue. She should try Oh Downer. She doesn't do that. Then she gets overly close and he starts backing away. And I wonder if this is, at this point, I was wondering if this was fun for her to play. Because, you know, this is like very much what they do with this character all the time. And she just does it with, I don't know, various characters in TNG. And I wonder if she enjoys it or, I don't know, it feels weird to me.
I think she gets kind of a trolling pleasure from it. She makes Jean-Luc Picard uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think she enjoys making these individuals who are very sort of unbending of making them uncomfortable.
Well, she's probably bored otherwise.
Yes.
Maybe she doesn't find a lot of intellectual equals around her or something.
Right.
She says she's never been with a shapeshifter, which gets Odo's immediate attention. Been with, he says awkwardly.
He's very uncomfortable.
She says, I've heard you're the only one of your kind. All of the men she's been with before have needed to be shaped and molded and manipulated. And finally, I've met a man who knows how to do it himself.
Oh, Lwaxana.
Oh, funny. And then she leans in, but he freaks out and runs away. And that's never stopped her before. So I'm sure, she's ready to chase after him. Now we go back to Ops, and Miles is trying to get data out of the probe.
So he's trying to download data from an unknown alien probe. Have these people not heard of malware?
Right into the station computer, apparently.
Brilliant.
And he's surprised that it's actually working. That should have been his first clue that something was wrong.
This is kind of interesting here because some of the terminology he uses is actually kind of accurate. He uses the phrase using an emulator module to be compatible with the probe. That would be something you would do if you were running non-native code on a different machine. Of course, the bit that doesn't really make any sense is they never actually talked about how they would understand the underlying instruction set of a completely unknown alien computer system. We'll skip that bit.
But what if it's a virus like Independence Day?
Oh, Independence Day hadn't happened by this point, so they were safe.
Oh my God, that's funny. Well, when the transfer is complete, Miles says, well done, computer. And again, he should be worried that things are working because that's not how it normally goes.
That should be your first red flag.
And then Dax tells it to start translating the data, isolating syntax results. I guess they're trying to understand the language.
Yeah.
And then Odo comes up the elevator and into Sisko's office. And Odo says, Commander, I have a problem. And Sisko says, Quark? Yeah, that's what I would have thought too. But he says, no, sir, this one is named Lwaxana. He says there was a minor incident at the bar that he helped her with, and now she's, grateful. And Odo is uncomfortable with the manner in which she is expressing this gratitude. I really waver between it's amusing and Lwaxana is quite a character and she's funny to watch. And B, it's a little insulting to make this character just weirdly, endlessly sex-starved and so one-dimensional. She's shown more dimensions in other storylines, but it's like they just kind of dump her into this single stereotype every time. It's like Bashir, and I don't know, it's not great.
Well, she's kind of a caricature who's been in theater and movies forever.
Yeah.
And that's what that character is.
I guess, and I think I would be okay with it if she were not so heavily involved in storylines. But if she were just a character who sort of dipped in and out here and there, the one dimension would be okay.
It's if you expand a cardboard cutout into a real character, you can't go back to having them as a cutout.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Well said. Anyway, Odo says she seems interested in me, which makes Sisko smile and finally gets his attention. This is literally the first time I've seen Sisko care about anything. He actually seems really excited by this story, at least anything with Odo. He just doesn't seem interested at all. And he's suddenly very on top of this conversation. He's like, well, what's wrong with that? And Odo says, well, she's so aggressive, like a Winoni tracehound, whatever that is. They like to make up words on this show.
Certainly Odo does.
Sisko says, have you thought of letting her catch you? A little romance, Odo. This is kind of a cute side of Sisko. He finally cares about something that's going on around him, and that's not Jake.
Well, Avery makes it seem very genuine. I mean, he starts off this scene and you think it's going to be very serious. Odo's coming to see him. He has a problem. And then it turns out it's Odo asking for advice really about romance.
About girls.
It must be sort of funny to Sisko to be in that situation.
Right. Although there's something about it sometimes where you feel like if the actor himself is not very interested in the storyline, he's kind of a dud. And then when he is interested in the storyline, he's like, oh, look, there he is.
Yeah.
Odo is like, I'm busy. I have 6 pylons that need a complete security sweep. But then he sits down and he sighs. You humanoids spend far too much time on your mating rituals, which I think we covered with Odo before. Sisko says it does help the procreation of one species, which is something lost, I think, a little bit on Odo. Although this does make me start thinking about a lot of things with Odo regarding procreation and how that would work, and I don't want to know how that would work.
Yeah, you don't need to go there.
No. Odo says procreation does not require changing how you smell or writing bad poetry or sacrificing plants to serve as tokens of affection. And again, I ask, where does Odo get this from? Is he watching old Earth movies? Where are all these ridiculous ideas coming from?
I do like how Sisko, even though this is a personal issue, he's still basically telling Odo to deal with something that he's uncomfortable with because he knows he can handle it. This is almost like a mentoring moment.
Yeah, I would say more mentoring than leadership. It's just like, these are some personal skills you need to develop.
And I like how he's pushing Odo to expand his understanding or experience. I like to see that.
Yeah, that was good. Odo says it's all irrelevant to him and he wants Sisko to do something about this woman. Can't you just tell her to leave me alone? And Sisko says, you can handle thieves and killers, but not one Betazoid woman. And Odo says he understands thieves and killers, but not her. And he doesn't want to create a diplomatic incident and insult her, which really is just an excuse for, please do this for me. But Sisko's like, I can't help you, dude. I don't know what to say. You got to handle this matter with delicacy. And Odo looks really annoyed, saying he doesn't handle delicacy very well.
I would make one comment on this of, I think I would class Lwaxana as several Beta Z women.
Like she's more of a presence than just one person?
Yes.
Back in Ops, Anar says the probe is made of some sort of corundium alloy. Now when she said some sort of, I thought of this YouTube video, which we've seen, where... You should Google it if you haven't seen it. It's some sort of video about Star Trek.
Is it some sort of corundium alloy?
It just emphasized the heavy use of the phrase some sort of. The computer says it's done analyzing the probe, and Miles is very concerned that it finished so quickly. Then Inara, Miles, and Dax all look at a screen, which just shows a computer graphic version of the probe kind of twisting around on the screen, and it has all the major colors of DS9. There's mustard, there's orange, there's purple, and there's blue. I always love how they act like the screen is showing them something. The screen does not show them anything. Like Dax says, oh, well, no science modules, no communication systems, but enough computer capacity to run a Galaxy-class starship. That is nowhere on the screen. I don't know how she determines that.
Well, also, shouldn't that be like setting off some red flags of this massively powered computer that doesn't actually seem to have anything?
Yes, it sounds very dangerous.
And you've just downloaded it to your systems. Good job.
Yeah. It's a big, powerful thing with a purpose you don't know. And Dax says, oh, that's very odd. Yeah, well, you're right. Here you are. So Kira then arrives asking what they've learned, and Dax says nothing to suggest the probe's mission. And I thought maybe it's there to zap someone and make them play the flute, so watch out.
Oh, yeah, that's happened before.
It has. Odo gets off the elevator on the promenade, and he looks left and right, thinking he's avoided Lwaxana, but she comes running out, and now she's in a bright red dress, and Odo tries to escape, but he can't.
Boom, she's caught him.
And how could you avoid her? There's only two places to go. You're either on the promenade or you're in Ops. Otherwise, you got to be hiding out in your quarters. That's your only hope. I don't know that Odo has quarters. I think he just lives in a bucket in his office, right? So he can't get away.
He talked about that earlier. He just regenerates in a bucket in his office.
Right. Now, a blonde, Lwaxana says she has reserved a wonderful holo program for them, and Odo is horrified that she told Quark that she's going into a holosuite with him. He is way too easily embarrassed. He's got to pull himself together.
Yes.
He tries to make an excuse saying he's busy, and he gets back in the elevator, but she follows him right in. I mean, you went into a confined space. That's not how you get away from someone. You got to go the other direction. But also, at the same time, I sympathize with him because if genders were reversed, no means no. That's why I'm uncomfortable with this story. I don't like it. Or not the story. I'm uncomfortable with the way the character's portrayed because I don't approve of it. It's harassment.
I see.
Lwaxana knocks on the inside of the elevator and says, Upper Pylon 3, which she does on Next Gen 2, where she knocks on the wall to get the computer to listen to her.
I did not know that.
Yes. And on Next Gen, she knocks on the wall and then she hears the computer in her own voice.
Oh, funny.
Very meta. Very amusing.
Yes.
So she says she'll have Quark send a minion with their picnic basket up to the pylon, and they can have their picnic there. And he says, I don't eat. This is not a real mouth. It is an approximation of one. He says he doesn't have an esophagus or a stomach or a digestive system. He says, I'm not like you, and every 16 hours I turn into a liquid. And she shrugs and says, I can swim. Oh my God. This is like it's Bashir in 50 years.
But as you pointed out last week, Odo can get knocked out by a falling boulder.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe he's somehow, in whatever it is that makes up a brain inside of him, it has convinced him that he is somehow humanoid. And that when he gets hit in the fake head, it hits his fake brain. And it makes him go unconscious.
Ah, so he's really into mimicking.
Yeah, he's a method actor.
Impressive.
And then I didn't see this coming for some reason, but the elevator suddenly stops and the lights go out. And Odo calls Ops saying he's stuck in Turbo Lift 7 with Ambassador Troy.
The stuff of nightmares.
Anara tells Kira that power to the pylon turbo lifts has failed. So Kira says they'll beam them out, but of course that doesn't work. When one thing goes wrong on Deep Space Nine, everything goes wrong.
Everything has to break.
Kira says not to worry, we'll get this repaired right away. Lwaxana looks happy to be stuck in the elevator with him. She says, alone at last. And he, of course, looks horrified.
Oh, she has this awesome look on her face.
Yeah. I also wondered at this point if she arranged for this to happen. That's not what happened. But I did wonder, and of course, also at this moment, you have to wonder why he doesn't just turn into a liquid and escape. We find out why he doesn't, but right at this moment, you're thinking, why doesn't he just turn into a cockroach or something tiny and get the heck out of there? But he doesn't.
And into the ad break.
Then after the ad break, Dax and Anara are scanning the transporter and everything seems fine. Miles is annoyed. He's like, nothing is wrong. And Kira says, great, everything is in working order, but nothing is working. That sounds like Deep Space Nine. It's like every episode. So Miles is going to try rerouting power, but he doesn't know how long it will take. I'm not sure how that will work, but they often reroute power to solve a problem. It's like, more power, we'll solve this problem, whatever it is.
All we need to do is reroute it.
Yeah.
What if you only have 2 wires going to it? Try rerouting that.
Oh my God. This being trapped in the elevator thing, as you know, may be my worst nightmare. But anyway, why do they never think that the new thing that has just appeared is causing the new bad thing that is currently happening? This has happened in almost every episode, and we never think it's the new thing that just arrived.
When you downloaded it to your computer.
We're going to talk about that some more. So Kira calls Odo and says, it's going to be a while. And then to explain it all away, she says, oh, by the way, Cardassian turbolifts run exposed multi-phased alternating currents through their positioning mechanisms, so don't try to shapeshift your way out.
#contrived.
Of course they do. Whatever that means, fix it immediately. Exposed currents sounds like a terrible idea. There's children on this station. And also, I would think, since Odo has been on the station for a long time, you wouldn't need to tell him that. It almost would have made more sense if he had told Lwaxana, boy, it would be easy if I could just shapeshift my way out of here and then manage to get the doors open, but I can't do it because of these exposed currents. But instead, Kira is like, don't do it, Odo, blah, blah, blah. Thought that was really awkward.
I can shapeshift through sealed airlocks, but I can't get out of a turbo lift. #contrived.
Yeah, it was so contrived. And then Odo says he wouldn't think of shapeshifting his way out anyway, and Lwaxana whispers, besides, it wouldn't be polite. And then he repeats it wouldn't be polite. I actually would have been kind of okay with this contrived story if they had instead, the entire reason he didn't leave is because it would have been impolite, and it actually would have left her there on her own. And not only impolite, but if you are a person who doesn't like confined spaces, might not have been great to abandon her that way.
Or another slight play on that was have him say, I can't leave a civilian behind who might be in danger.
After they went through this whole big thing about how he was sort of afraid of her, it might not have smelled true, I guess.
But I think you could have overridden that with his sense of duty over personal discomfort.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Lwaxana asks if they're in any danger, and Odo says, not if we remain calm. And she says, maybe we can take the opportunity to get to know each other. And Odo says he'd rather sit in silence. Of course, like he does in Quarks.
Oh, downer.
Lwaxana sighs and says, the quiet man. I've always been attracted to quiet men, so she's still on it. Then she sees the annoyance in Odo's face at her rambling, and she stops talking.
Do you think Lwaxana even knows how to be quiet?
No, I think that was the point. Because then she sits down on the elevator floor and says, I don't think I can be quiet. So there you go. She says Odo doesn't have to say another word, but she needs to talk, and I do believe that to be true. He sits down and says there's nothing to be afraid of, and she says, no, of course not. Things could be much worse. And Odo says, really? Which is pretty funny. And she says she was once trapped with her daughter on a Ferengi cargo ship, and she kind of rambles about that, and she's not really clear about what happened. I don't think the details are important here, but I think the rambling is more the point. And she says the daemon holding them was at the mercy of his uncontrollable passion for her, which means he wasn't all that bad. She's just crazy. As she's talking, Odo is wondering how many volts are in the exposed circuit, implying that maybe being electrocuted would be preferable to listening to her. She is like a caricature of a real person and
yes,
not so much a stereotype. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, It's very much a trope.
Yeah. Now Bashir is complaining about the ambassadors to Sisko, and Sisko's like, you never know when one of them will be in the right place at the right time to help you in your career. And he's like, this is a simple job. Why are you complaining? Bashir doesn't think it's so simple because nothing is making them happy, and they're dedicated to being unhappy and spreading unhappiness. They are the ambassadors of unhappy. This tickles Sisko, saying everyone has had to deal with assignments like this. Curzon Dax used to take perverse pleasure in assigning VIP guests to me. Ah, Bashir says, and now you're taking the same perverse pleasure in doing it to me. Exactly, Sisko says.
It's an important learning opportunity for Bashir, I think.
It really is.
I think Alexander Siddiq as Bashir is starting to come into his own. This is the most animated, believable that we've seen the character to this point. I've always felt he's been struggling with weak material.
He's not creeping on anyone here, so he has a chance, I guess, to do something different.
Yeah.
Jury's still out for me. Bashir asks when he graduated from these types of assignments, and Sisko says it was the day he hit one of the guests over a simple misunderstanding of him attempting to coax a young ensign to his quarters against her will. Ugh, great. Then Sisko puts his hand on Bashir's shoulder and says, but don't hit one of them, Doctor. I'm not as understanding as Curzon was. Bashir leaves, and then Miles gets Sisko's attention. He says he wants to talk about the computer, and Sisko asks if it's still giving him trouble, and Miles says, no, that's the problem. Then he asks the computer some questions, and he asks Sisko if he hears what he hears. Miles says, it's the same voice, but not the same attitude. Sisko says, it sounds like the computer. And Miles is like, I don't know, working with a computer as much as I do, you get to know it. He says, on the Enterprise, working with the computer was like dancing a waltz, and on this station, it's like a wrestling match. But it changed when they started downloading from the probe. It no longer resists commands or offers opinions or arguments. And he says, there's one other crazy thing. Every time I leave, something happens to bring me back. It's like the computer doesn't want me to leave it alone. Uh-oh. Sisko says you're making it sound like a child.
During most of this, Sisko has this look of, I think O'Brien has finally cracked.
Yeah.
Looking at this, it seems like it's almost a flaw in that they are so reliant on the computers to do the diagnostics for them. You don't see them digging into the guts of it, probably because it is impossible to show on TV and make interesting.
Yes.
It's almost like a warning against technology in some points.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And remember on Next Gen how they were always taking those little crystals out and then putting them back in, and like that's how they would reprogram the computer?
Yeah.
And Miles doesn't do that on here. At least not very frequently. We don't see that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't really know how to reprogram this computer, which is why he says it needs a root canal.
Yeah.
After the ad break, Sisko is giving a station log that they still haven't figured out what's causing the ship's computer to malfunction. In Ops, Dax is asking if it's possible that it's a non-biological life form. Kira says, like, someone left a baby at our doorstep, meaning the probe. Sisko wonders if we can communicate with it. Miles says, well, it's part and parcel of our computer now. Why would we do that? Why would we make it part and parcel of our computer before we even know what it is? Oh my God.
What did I say about malware?
Yeah. Download it into a closed system. Why would you put it right onto your network?
Oh, yeah. Well, they already have all those open Ethernet ports around the place.
So many problems with security. Dax says they don't know if it's capable of communication anyway, or even that it's sentient. Kira says it's more like a stray puppy that's attached itself to Miles. And Sisko is getting tired of these little silly stories that they keep telling because it seems to be slowly shutting down the station. We need to get it out of here. Miles says, well, it started when we downloaded the files. Duh. Maybe we could upload the files back to the probe. That is not how it works. What are they talking about?
That's some amazing hand-wavy stuff.
Even a non-computer person must understand. If you've downloaded a file, you don't need to upload it back to the other thing to get rid of it. Just delete it.
This comes down to the writers having no understanding.
Oh, so stupid. Dax says maybe it's already made itself part of the computer. Miles says it's not a virus. There's been no evidence that it's trying to override our control networks, which is why you shouldn't have just haphazardly downloaded it into your main computer in the first place.
Well, this didn't make sense because just a few seconds earlier, they talked about how it's part and parcel of their computer now.
I know. This makes no sense. This is very badly written.
Yeah.
He says it seems more like it's just creating connections with active areas of the computer. Miles says if he's right, transferring all of its programming off the station would solve our problems. This is so dumb.
It's not any dumber than it feeds off computer energy. Or what? If it had been something they transported across that lived in the computer and was some kind of energy being,
yeah,
okay, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
But it's a computer program. That's running code.
They keep just saying files. We downloaded files. Yeah, it's so silly.
Please.
Sisko just kind of nods and Miles heads off to do whatever it is he thinks is going to work, even though it's dumb and it won't work.
It's a Unix system bad.
Jurassic Park. Siska asks Kira how long since they've heard from Odo. Kira says it's been 90 minutes since the comms went down, and they've been in there almost 4 hours now. So Sisko asks if she knows his regenerative cycle, and Kira, suddenly realizing there might be a problem, says she has no idea. But if he doesn't get back in his pail in time... Why does it have to be a pail?
Yeah.
Is this a special pail? Can't he just regenerate anywhere? I just thought it was so funny. If he doesn't get back to his pail in time, it was the dumbest line.
Is it a latinum-plated bucket?
It's not, but he should have gotten one. Then it would have been more meaningful.
Yeah.
There's some real goofiness in the last 5 minutes of this show.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Then we do a quick shot outside and then back into ops with Miles and Inara. The computer says outgoing data stream activated. Miles tells the computer to upload the probe command sequences back to the probe's computer. Why would you do that? They're already on the probe's computer. You didn't remove them from there and then put them in your computer. Oh, this is so annoying.
Well, they'd have 2 copies then.
That's true. But also at the same time, even if you don't know anything about computers, you know this isn't going to work because there's still 15 minutes left in the show. So this, And besides that, this is a dumb plan.
Yeah.
The computer says it's unable to complete the task, and it says, please abort and retry. He tries again, and then this time the lights go out. Man, if I had $1 for every time the lights go out on this place...
Notice it said abort retry, so clearly the system is running DOS.
Is that what DOS says?
DOS used to have an abort and retry.
That's funny. Maybe it's a shout out to DOS.
Yeah, this is still the era of DOS.
That's true. It's 93. On the promenade, the female ambassador is wondering if both the lights and the heat are out because she didn't bring any warm clothes. Bashir's like, I'm sure it's fine. Why would you think it's fine? Every week on this show, the station is nearly destroyed and we never evacuate or do anything to save anybody. The Vulcan ambassador says he was under the impression that their chief of operations was competent. So why aren't their backup systems functioning? This is a good question.
Yeah.
Bashir says, on the edge of the frontier, a lot of things can happen. Then he says he'll escort them back to their quarters where everyone can just wait it out. That seemed like a good plan.
Why didn't it take him to Quarks?
Because he'd have to just keep talking to them. In the turbo lift, Lwaxana is saying, enough about me, and Odo says, as if he hasn't been listening at all to anything she says. She asks him to talk about himself, but he says he's a private man. Odo is also looking a little bit sweaty and uncomfortable.
That's a good way of them showing how he needs to regenerate.
Yeah. She asks if his hair is real, and he says it's not real hair, but it is real in that it is part of him. She asks how he did the hair, and he says it took a great deal of practice, and he imitated the style of the Bajoran man who was assigned to study him at the research center. He seems irked with the questions, and this is where I find Odo really tough to like.
Yeah.
Endless exasperation is just kind of a drag.
But we start to see a little progression here.
Yeah, but it's not yet, right? Up until this point, it's like, oy, okay, we're still exasperated with anybody trying to ask you a question. Maybe turn into something else then. Don't look like a human if you don't want to talk to somebody. Turn yourself into a Labrador.
Yeah.
And then maybe nobody would ask you questions.
Yeah, he does a very good cart from earlier episodes. Good rat as well.
Or a painting.
Yep.
Then she asks if he grew up in a laboratory, but he says he didn't grow up in the way she thinks. It was merely a transition from what I used to be to what I learned to become.
So he did really grow up in a lab.
Yeah, that's true. She says that sounds pretty lonely, learning to survive when you are so different from everyone else. He nods, I think a little struck with the understanding that she's showing him.
Well, she is a beta Z.
True. He tries to call ops again, but the comms are still down. He's looking more and more sweaty, and she says he looks warm, but he brushes it off, saying he's fine. She asks him more about what it was like in the lab, but says he doesn't have to talk about it if it bothers him. And for a change, he says, not at all. He says he tried to fit in by being entertaining and being the life of the party. Like, Odo, turn into a chair, be a razor cat, whatever. And then he says, I hate parties.
Of course he does.
She says, maybe you've been going to the wrong parties. Come to one of mine and I'll make sure all the guests are there to entertain you. This is a better Lwaxana, the version that sort of cares about somebody else. I like that. And then he kind of grunts, and she worries that he's not well, but he says he's in hour 15 of his 16-hour regeneration cycle, and she hugs him to be supportive.
I thought it was kind of nice. I did like this scene because you start seeing the barriers Odo has built up. Obviously, he did have a very strange or difficult upbringing.
Right.
And I like how Lwaxana's being able to bring that out a little for him to talk about it. And it also makes sense of how Odo's character is if he felt like he was forced to be entertaining.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a really good part of the story here. illuminating.
And you can see why now he wants to be very private.
Right.
Because he obviously had a lot of his life, he didn't have any control.
And maybe why he is that beige line where the colors are sort of beige and there's nothing about him that really stands out. That way he can, be like a wallflower that melts into the wall, not literally, although he could, but where he just sort of disappears and he's not standing out.
Oh, good point.
Back in Ops, they have a new plan. Miles says he's ready to manually transfer the probe's files to 6 isolinear rods, which according to Memory Alpha is some kind of Cardassian storage device. Thank you very much.
So they're trying to put it into a USB drive, basically.
Yes. So we tried uploading them back to the probe, which was dumb. We didn't need to do anyway. And now instead, we're going to load them all onto the USB drive. At the very least now, we're trying to get these files separate from the network, which is what we should have done in the first place, right?
Yes.
But anyway, with 11 minutes left, I don't think this plan's going to work either. They start distracting the computer with a bunch of requests while Inara starts this manual file transfer.
I was sure she was going to get it here. I was very worried about the character.
What's funny about this is today's computers, like Alexa and Siri, listen to you all the time. So the computer should have already known this plan.
Right.
But in 1993, computers weren't doing that all the time. So the computer had no idea that this plan was going on.
And the whole idea of, we're going to just overload the computer. This is not an Apollo guidance computer.
I don't get that reference.
Apollo 11, when it was landing, the guidance computer got overloaded. That's a nerd joke.
Good. On this station, or I guess in Star Trek anywhere, you have to say computer before it listens to you.
So this intelligent, computer-based life form that feeds on computer energy, by the way, and is all part of their systems, isn't listening to everything you're saying. It only listens when it hears computer.
Yeah.
Aye.
So as they keep asking it different requests, different, more complicated requests, it starts kind of glitching in its speech and it's starting to get overloaded. And they keep giving it requests as Inara slowly pulls out the isolinear rods one at a time. Suddenly, sparks fly out of the console in front of Miles, and Dax says she's reading a huge plasma surge in the habitat ring. And we jump now to the habitat ring, and Bashir is walking the ambassadors to their rooms. The blue guy says that the probe briefing better happen on time, lights or no lights. Don't we have any flashlights in the future? Did you notice they're just walking in the dark? Anyway, then the plasma explodes, causing a fireball to hit Bashir and the ambassadors. This is like the third fireball we've had on this station since we started watching the show.
Yeah, didn't we just have a fireball last week?
We did. I wish they wouldn't use that effect. It's not very good.
What's funny about that effect is I went and watched the one from last week.
Same one?
And it's exactly the same flame front. They just changed the corridor.
That's funny. And, of course, the computer isn't responding, so Cisco calls for manual fire gear and runs off with Kira.
Hopefully Kira kept the extra-long oven gloves from the passenger.
We've never seen those since. I hope we see them again. Those are great.
Yeah.
Fire and smoke are filling the area. Bashir is smashing his hand on some panel, which appears to be on a soft wall as it's moving entirely too much. Not sure the editing was really great in this part of the episode.
Hit it a little bit too hard.
Yeah, he gets the panel off and he tries to pull a big lever, but it doesn't work. And they're all coughing in the smoke as we dramatically head into a commercial. Kira and Cisco arrive after the commercial and they start shooting at something, I guess a fire door, into the habitat ring or something, but...
Hey, I like Kira's first reaction. Get the gun out. Start shooting.
Actually, Cisco started shooting. I don't know if you noticed that.
He did? Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Kira must have been very disappointed. I'm just speculating here, but I wonder if Cisco was tempted to just leave them. Nothing we can do. Just leave the ambassadors in there. Put them down as casualties.
They never say it's Bashir and the ambassadors. But they must know. Although I don't know because the computers aren't working very well.
That's a good point. Yeah.
There's just a part where Dax says, there's people there, but they don't say who it is.
There's people there. Oh, no, they're ambassadors. It's okay. You can leave them.
No. Cisco doesn't like to leave people behind. Back in Ops, Miles is complaining that the computer isn't paying any attention to him. Dax says it's because it doesn't want to leave, like a scared puppy. Miles tells a story about having a puppy that never liked to be left alone. He says they like attention. Then Miles suddenly realizes they're giving the puppy too much attention and they need to give it less. He says, I've got to build a doghouse. And this analogy is getting old.
Oh, dear.
It's like, come on.
Well, I think this is where the name of the episode comes from.
The Forsaken.
Yeah, they talk about how it's probably been on its own and abandoned for potentially a long period of time. So I assume that's where the episode name comes from?
That's possible.
Yeah.
It's really the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise I don't know what the episode title means.
Yeah.
Back in the turbo lift, Odo is breathing hard and literally starting to melt. Lwaxana sees he's suffering and asks him to look at her, but he doesn't want her to see him that way. He says no one has ever seen it.
Why is he labored breathing?
I don't know. Why did it knock him out when the rock hit him in the head?
Oh.
Why did the bright light blind him? So many questions.
Well, the light I could see because the excessive photons hitting him might have a negative effect on his odd cellular structure.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Lwaxana sees he's suffering and asks him to look at her. He doesn't want her to see him that way. He says no one has ever seen it. And she says, it's all right, didn't the scientists see him this way? And he says it was different. It was just research to him. There's no reason to be ashamed, she says. He says he's not ashamed, it's just a private matter. And she asks how to make it easier, but he says she can't. So she takes off her wig and hands it to him. And she says, no one's ever seen me like this. And he says, why? It looks fine, which is cute. She says, it looks ordinary, and I've never cared to be ordinary, which is quite true for this character. She says, even we non-shapeshifters have to change who we are once in a while. Melty Odo says, you are not at all what I expected. She says, no one has ever paid her a greater compliment. He says he can't hold his shape any longer, and the music swells as she says, let go, and he kind of melts into her lap, and she catches him in her dress.
Oh.
That was cute.
This was very touching. I really liked the interaction between the two.
Yeah.
And how she says she doesn't like to be ordinary. Odo is the very definition of that.
Of trying to be ordinary.
Yeah.
That's like his goal.
And he can't be. So it's a great contrast in these two characters.
Yeah, that's a good analysis.
I did enjoy that scene. I thought it worked really well. And it seemed very genuine.
Yeah.
Both actors can do a very good job.
Well, this is the payoff.
Yeah.
These are two really talented actors. And
yes,
we took a long time to get to this part of the story. And this is the payoff for sort of the pain we had to go through with some of the
clunky, cheesy.
Yeah, the cheesy stuff. This was the payoff and it was good. Yeah.
Well, it's lucky she was wearing a long dress or she'd be standing in Odo.
She could have like caught him in her pocket or something.
We've seen Odo can actually change his volume.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Maybe not when he's regenerating though.
Ah. So I guess he is forced to regenerate because it's so much effort to hold that shape.
I guess so. And he needs to get energy back, yeah. Or he just needs to rest, I guess.
Yeah.
Back on the habitat ring, they're breaking through the door. Kira is telling an NPC to get portable oxygen, and also something for treating plasma burns.
Did you notice the Starfleet NPC called her Sir?
I did notice that, yes. She also says to get a runabout ready to transport the survivors to Bajor if necessary. Then we go back to Ops, and Inara says the sub-program is ready. Miles says, computer, analyze sub-program called PUP. The computer says it's a series of bidirectional data transfers and monitoring commands. Miles says to reroute all main computer backup functions through the subprogram. Then he says, computer, now listen carefully. I want to transfer all probe command sequences out of core memory and into the subprogram, PUP. Why would it do this? If it wouldn't move it before, why would it do this? And also, what he said was, reroute all main computer backup functions through the subprogram. So what exactly are we doing?
Well, he talked earlier about how they think that this alien computer program likes to know what's going on and be the center of attention. And he made the computer analyze PUP, which he said was an input and output monitoring system. So this alien life form in the computer would understand what this thing was if it was a hub that was seeing all this traffic going in and out and everything was being copied there. So it would have a lot of interactions going on. It would see everything that was going on. So I think that's what he was attempting to do here.
Okay.
It's kind of silly, but it sort of makes sense in the story.
Okay, I'll allow it. Stand by, the computer says. Then transfer complete. And the lights all come back on. Dax calls Sisko and says fire suppression is working again and you should be able to get in. When they get into the habitat ring, they at first can't find Bashir, but then he kicks open a panel and crawls out. He helps out the other ambassadors, and one by one they all say Julian saved them and he was very calm and in charge under severe conditions.
So Julian was hiding in the Cardassian version of a Jeffries tube.
Yes.
They certainly all seem very impressed.
Yes, the blue guy says they'll put him in for a commendation. Good job, Julian.
Yeah.
Kira looks shocked, which is hilarious. Maybe my favorite part of the whole episode was the look on her face.
Yes.
Sisko says nice work to him, and he says he was just in the right place at the right time, which is the lesson for him this episode.
Sisko's own words came back, full circle.
And finally, the turbo lift doors open, and Odo and Lwaxana exit, all in one piece. Odo says he knows that wasn't exactly the picnic she had in mind. She says when it comes to picnics, the only thing that really matters is the company. He says your sensitivity and discretion are appreciated. And then she says, next time you see me, I'll give you a lot more to appreciate. And he kind of smiles after her as she walks away. Back in Ops, Cisco asks Miles how he beat the thing in the computer. Miles says he didn't. He adopted it. He got their friend out of the main command pathways and into a subprogram.
Adopted it? Really?
Yes.
Adopted it.
Cisco asks if they're just supposed to leave it there, and Miles says, why not? It's happy and it's not bothering us anymore. Miles says he'll look after it and make sure it gets enough attention. Cisco says, keep it off the furniture. Why are they so insistent on these idiotic endings?
Yeah.
So
and Dax
stupid.
says, oh, it's just another new life form visiting the station.
The end.
God, who writes this?
All right, well, we've reached the end of the episode. So do you have any overt analysis?
So they now have this life form, maybe it's an AI, that feels the need to live, that it does actually want to be alive.
It's Moriarty, and they've put it into a little snow globe.
Yeah, exactly. It would make more sense, and it feeds off computer energy. Ugh. All right, that I just found kind of irritating.
It's an example of non-computer people, again, writing something about a computer.
Precisely. And this also opens up questions such as, how do you know it wasn't a rogue AI from an alien species that they managed to get it onto this probe and throw it out into space because once it learns everything it can about the people on the station, it starts killing them?
It's control.
It's MCP, it's the Master Control Program. So there's some problems with this.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with this, for sure.
But you got to see a lot of Miles, and I always appreciate Miles. And what's funny is Dax, as the science and the computer expert, didn't seem to be spending a lot of time actually doing stuff in this episode.
Maybe she thought it was dumb. She's like, Miles can deal with the puppy, I don't care.
Ben, this whole thing's stupid. I'm going to go and do something else more fun.
You can get your B team to sort this one out.
Yes.
I'm going to go have a Rectigino. Okay, so any more over-analysis?
I think I'll just finish up my analysis with, I would like to know more about that probe.
Where did it come from?
I mean, they don't really cover much of that. I mean, it's just a device to keep the story going, which is a shame.
Wouldn't it be funny if you found out it was a pet of an AI?
Oh, yeah.
An AI created a pet and then couldn't deal with it and
just
that would threw it out.
That's really nasty. I think that wraps it up for me.
Okay, let's go to women in the future. I just have a couple of things to say. I was a little frustrated by the caricature of Lwaxana. They came around in the end and they showed that she really is a well-rounded person and she cares. And, she was able to really be there for Odo. And I think I like the fact that it surprised Odo that there was more to her than what he thought. And I do think he does tend to see people as, one or two dimensions and doesn't quite understand the depth. So he was quite surprised by the fact that she could understand and care. I did like that in the story. But I think that's really it for the women in the future. Well, I mean, the whiny ambassador, they were all whiny, so it's hard to say that the woman was worse. They were all annoying. So yeah, I don't think I have a lot for women in the future. That maybe is the shortest women in the future section.
It could be. Well, I think another thing we saw in this episode, though, was we actually got to see Julian evolve a little bit. I think Alexander Siddiq was actually given a chance to do something other than a slightly sex-obsessed, creepy teenager.
True. And I think he was able to actually learn that Cisco does have some wisdom and that there are some reasons for the things that he asks him to do, even if he doesn't agree. I guess that is sort of how you learn about anything. Right. So yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
I'll be honest and say I didn't remember Julian being such a sort of one-dimensional cardboard cutout of a character.
Yeah.
It's because I obviously remember the later episodes.
Sure, and of course all I have are really the early episodes. This one seems vaguely familiar to me. I may have watched it, and maybe just because Lwaxana was on it and I like the TNG tie-ins, but I didn't remember it in great detail, but I do think I saw it.
I remembered this one, but only because of the elevator scene. I do not remember it in depth. It's been a long time since I've seen this one.
Yeah, the elevator scene is the thing that I remember. What I remember about not liking about this show is I really didn't like the characters. I didn't like Kira because she was annoyed all the time. And now I've, seen some of the development and I appreciate that and I like her a little bit more. And I certainly didn't like Odo either. And I struggle a lot of times with people telling me what a great character Odo is. And I'm just like, really? Have you watched the show? And of course, I'm the one who hasn't watched it. At this point now, I've seen 16 episodes. But he also can be so one-dimensional. And he does that thing where he just scoffs at everything. And he's just so miserable all the time. And it's like, oh my goodness. Okay, that just gets old. So I can see why I would have gotten a bit fed up and just gone, you know what? There's many other things I can watch. I don't need to watch the show. and I just moved on.
It's a slow burn show.
Yeah, but you get these little hints of development, and there was a little bit of a hint, just that one little moment in this episode where at the very end, he kind of smiled when it's like, oh, I misjudged her, or I didn't expect that. And there's just that little bit of an addition to his personality.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's just this little refreshing thing that happened. I like that. Okay, let's do thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Maybe surprisingly, I'm giving it a thumbs up. Because it had good elements and it had bad elements. It's very close, but the balance is thumbs up.
I'm thinking. I really, really liked the way the scene ended in the turbo lift with Lwaxana and Odo.
Yeah.
But the rest of the episode was kind of awful. So I don't know what to do. I want to give that little thing a thumbs up, but I'm struggling with the rest of the episode, so maybe it's a neutral? I hate to give it a neutral because I almost feel like that's just meh, and I didn't really have a meh feeling about it. I thought parts of it were not good, and then I liked the development of Lwaxana and Odo. So maybe I should just get off the fence and say, okay, I give it a teeny tiny thumbs up. I give it a Barbie doll thumbs up.
That's a win, I guess.
All right. That is it for season 1, episode 16. Come back next week for episode 17 already. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there and listen to all of our other awesome podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.